Military. The legions had 4,200 men. They used uniform, brace, helmets, and tunics. By 100 BC, most soldiers became professionals. The soldiers were also expected to build roads and forts. Julius Caesar, one of the leaders of early Rome, was a general. He became the head of the government at a time when the Roman Senate still wanted to rule. He was killed by senators. Mark Antony. He supported Caesar during the Civil War, joined forces with Cleopatra to fight Octavian and another Roman civil war, was killed in a great battle with Octavian.
Baths. The public baths were very popular in ancient Rome, and were a busy, noisy, and lively meeting place for the Romans. Ancient Rome had hundreds of these baths where Roman citizens could bath, have their hair cut, exercise in the gym, read at the bath's library, and even grab a snack. A Roman visiting the baths to bath would have had to pass through several baths in succession: tepid, hot and dry, warm and steamy, and a final cold plunge bath in the Frigidarium. Roman men and women would try to visit the baths at least once a day. The Pantheon. The Pantheon was a temple in honor of the Olympic god. It is the best preserved of all the Roman monuments. The original Pantheon was constructed by Vespasius Agrippa in 27 BC. Aqueducts were built from stone, brick, and volcanic cement. The sewers run below ground. When water reaches Rome, it follows it into enormous cisterns maintained on the highest ground. The first water supply was via the river Tiber. The main sewer of Rome was the Cloaca Maxima, was built by one of the Etruscan kings, drained the marshes in the valleys between the hills, dumped solids and urine into vats where it was collected and bought by fillers. Roads. Once the road was planted, the trees were cleared. Then a trench was dug around 1 meter deep, with layers of stones of different sizes. The surface was made with a raised curve, and ditches were built to drain water away. Colosseum was built in 70 AD, 70,000 spectators. Originally known as Flavian Amphitheater. Reign of emperors Vespasian and his son Titus, for doing competitions, chariot races, etc. Circus Maximus was built on 500 BC. Women could attend. It was built for racetracks and 25,000 spectators.
He was a Roman statesman, general, and author famous for the conquest of Gaul. He changed the Roman Republic into a truly Mediterranean empire. Caesar was a brilliant general and commanded an army of 50,000 loyal men. His success in military granted his loyalty of all his soldiers, but he was seen as a cruel man, only driven by expanding his own personal power. As a result, he made enemies of important politicians in Rome itself. He crossed the river Rubicon and advanced to confront his enemies in Rome. The Senate considered this to be treasonable offense, but there was little they could do. Caesar returned to Rome in 45 BC as a dictator. However, he allowed the Senate to continue working, except that he replaced the loyal senators with his own appointments of loyal men. In 44 BC, Caesar was murdered by those politicians who feared that he was too obsessed with his own importance. His murder took place in the Senate House of Rome. Octavian. He took the name Octavian in 44 BC, after the murder of his great-uncle Julius Caesar. In his will, Caesar had adopted Octavian and made him his heir. Through cold, hard political calculation, he was able to achieve ultimate power in Rome. In 43 BC, Octavian, Mark Antony, and another Roman general, Marcus Lepidus, ruled Rome. When Antony gave Roman provinces to his children by Cleopatra, Octavian declared war on Antony. In 27 BC, the Roman Senate granted Octavian the name Augustus. They also gave him the legal power to run religious, civil, and military affairs, with the Senate as an advisory body, effectively making him emperor. He restored peace after 100 years of civil war, maintained an honest government and a sound currency system, developed an efficient postal service, fostered free trade among the provinces, and built many bridges, aqueducts, and buildings adorned with beautiful works of art created in the classical style. The empire extended under Augustus, with his generals conquering Spain, Gaul, Pannonia, and Dalmatia. He annexed Egypt and the most of southwestern Europe up to the Danube River. After his death, the people of the Roman Empire worshipped Augustus as a god. Diocletian. He became emperor by his troops because he was a great general. To establish order, he enlarged the army. To control the soldiers, he created more generals and gave them less soldiers. He divided the empire into provinces, first into 70 and then into 116. To manage better the empire, he also split the empire into East and West Empire. Each half was governed by an August and a Caesar, first and second more powerful men, respectively. He became the Augustus of the East and named a soldier called Maximian as the Augustus of the West. He stopped the increase of prices and wage, but defending the country was even more expensive, so he had to increase taxes, making a census every 5 years that was controlled by the army. Soldiers became more powerful than ordinary people, and the Senate lost its authority, becoming just the city council of Rome. Diocletian declared himself a god, making others impossible to challenge him, and forcing Christians because they didn't accept him as a god. In 305, he forced Maximian to do the same. Finally, he retired and let Caesars to take over. The soldier tried to choose again an emperor and chose 4 contenders, including Constantine, future emperor of Rome. Nero. His family was killed by Caligula. When he was young, the empire was ruled by Burrus and his tutor Seneca. In 1590, he ordered to murder his mother, and in 62 AD, Burrus died, giving him the absolute power. In 64 AD, he started a fire in the Circus Maximus and said that the Christians had made it. He started an exhaustive pursuit to Christians. The Senate started to rebel, and they were going to murder him, but they were discovered and executed. Between them, it was his tutor, Seneca. He was obsessed with Greek culture, usually traveling there. In one of these trips, he returned and he was attacked by rebels because he was more interested in himself than in the empire. He managed to escape, but finally, in 64 AD, he committed suicide. Constantine was chosen by his troops as emperor and found his rival Maxentius. It said that before the battle he saw a cross in the sky with the message, "You will conquer with this sign." After his victory, he granted tolerance to Christians and even giving special privilege to the ones who adopted. Constantine wanted a great city and founded Constantinople in the Byzantine province, making the Byzantine Empire. Workers were very close to their land because the increase of taxes, creating rebellions of the barbarians in the whole empire.
Gladiators and games. Games. Public entertainments in Rome were called ludi. There were 3 kinds of entertainment: theatrical performances, chariot races, and gladiator fights. But they also had naval fights. Each one was performed in special buildings. Gladiators. Gladiators were volunteers or slaves who fought for the public's entertainment. Some of them fought each other. Sometimes they fought until one of them appealed from mercy, but some other times they fought till death. Gladiators also fought dangerous and rare animals. When were the first games? The first gladiator games, that also include theatrical performances, chariot racings, gladiator fights, and naval fights, were first made in Rome in the year 264 BCE. Who could become a gladiator? You could become a gladiator if you were a prisoner of war, a slave being sold to a gladiator school, or a free man that voluntarily entered the profession. Types of gladiator. Rhetoric. His essence was not inspired by military. It was inspired by the essence of a fisherman. He fought with a net and a trident. Murmillo. His name was derived from a Greek kind of fish, probably because his helmet had a long crest that resembled a fish. He had an oblong shield. Samnites. They wore a breastplate and greaves. They had a helmet with small holes for the eyes and fins. It resembled a fish. They also had a big shield and usually fought with a dagger. Thracian. He usually fought naked or with a chainmail. He used a small sword or small shield. He wrapped a string along his arm to protect it. Animal versus animal fights. First, rare animals were displayed. Then came the animal fights. More common animals like bears and panthers were forced to fight each other. They also used bulls and lions to entertain the public. Roman theater. Roman theater borrowed Greek ideas and improved them. It was less philosophical and encompassed more than drama. Acrobatics, gladiators, jugglers, athletics, chariot races, namuachik, and boxing. Naval fights. Naval fights were done by filling the Colosseum with several feet of water. Then, Roman battleships were entered to the Colosseum and fought each other. When the show was over, the Colosseum was drained. Athletic games. Athletic games in Rome were started with funeral games, and they were sacred. When they started to be a sport, people practiced them in a special date.